Thank you to everyone tuning into the virtual launch of my manifesto for May's elections. There's a definite sense of deja vu, to tell you the truth, because of last year's campaign, which was obviously abated due to coronavirus. This year's elections take on a whole new significance because they're a referendum on the way Boris Johnson has handled the pandemic. But before I comment on Tory performance and highlight all of the great things that I want to do in a second term, I want to tackle the events of the last few days head on. The publication of the Calla report sent shockwaves through the political establishment. When people choose their representatives, they do so rightly believing that those elected to office should work in the public's best interests, not their own narrow self-interests. The seriousness of the situation within Liverpool City Council is a lesson to politicians of all persuasions. The public expect the very highest standard from those of us in public life, and it's up to all of us to meet those challenges. They can be reassured that the combined authority which I lead was not implicated in any wrongdoing whatsoever, nor were any of our other local councils. Now, I'm in no way downplaying the seriousness of the accusations and allegations, but as the report concludes, they are confined to a relatively small number of people and a limited number of council departments within one council, Liverpool City Council, and they're not representative of the wider region. I know that in the wake of the report, all of us standing for election have a huge job on our hands to rebuild trust and restore confidence in politics. I've never been a professional politician. I actually trained as a bricklayer and come from a construction background. I got into politics because I wanted to change my home, the place I was born and raised in, for the better. My record in office so far demonstrates that Labour in power can be trusted to stand up for all of our communities and deliver positive change. The manifesto I'm launching today builds on the foundations we've already laid. It clearly articulates the needs of the 1.6 million people in our city region and sends a crystal clear message to Johnson and the Tories that there is an alternative to his divide and conquer policies. If you want an illustration of his toxic mix of austerity for the many and reward for the Tory few, then there's no greater exemplification than the coronavirus pandemic. The UK stands almost alone in the last 12 months for having not only taken one of the worst economic hits in the world, but for having one of the highest death tolls too, currently standing at almost 130,000. Every one of them a family robbed of a loved one. This past year has been a story of choices. As the virus ravaged Northern Europe, we had a chance to lock down early. But Boris Johnson chose not to, despite him promising our councils whatever it takes. He then said there was no money left to help them. But there was enough for him to waste £37 billion on a failed test and trace programme, with Tory donors, by the way, getting £2 billion worth of contracts. And they rewarded Dominic Cummings with a 40% pay rise, whilst brave nurses who've worked valiantly on the front line against COVID got a derisory 1%. But Johnson now claims that he wants to level up the country. Well, you don't level things up by exacerbating the north-south divide, and I'd urge everyone to remember the choices the Tories have made over the past year when you come to making your choice at the ballot box in a few weeks' time. let's face it, the task ahead of us is massive as we look towards recovery. It's on a scale not seen since we had to rebuild after the Second World War. But May's elections are vitally important to the future of our city region. When I launched my campaign in 2017, I wanted devolution to be our chance to wrestle power and funding away from Westminster, to shape our own destiny and to take back control from a centralised system that has too often let us down. Having a Metro Mayor has given us what London has had for decades: a single, influential voice to government and strategic, locally accountable leadership. We may be a region with many accents, but we now speak with one voice. Rather than civil servants in faraway places making decisions about areas that they couldn't actually point to on a map, we've worked in partnership with local people to deliver policies that local people want, that will benefit all of us. We've invested over £400 million in every part of our region, creating over 9,000 jobs, 5,500 apprenticeships, and 15,000 homes. We've introduced an inclusive investment strategy and worked to support community wealth building. And we're doing something to address issues such as climate emergency, gender discrimination, and institutionalised racism. Our economic recovery plans aren't just growth for growth's sake. I want a fairer, more equal and socially just city region for us all. I'm a pro-business mayor, but I'm also a pro-worker mayor too. And nothing embodies that more than my Fair Employment Charter. This dovetails with our investment strategy to work with local businesses to promote good employment practices. Practices like paying the real living wage, clamping down on 0 hours contracts, employing people from underrepresented groups, and giving trade unions a proper voice. We're leading the way. We are the ones who stepped up to protect our residents and our local economy from the worst effects of coronavirus, whilst government did it. It's been a collective and collaborative approach, working with our local council leaders and a wide range of partners to launch £40 million emergency fund to help keep the local economy afloat, provided £9.5 million of support for small and micro businesses, for sole traders and the self-employed, many of whom had been excluded and forgotten by the government, who chose not to support them at all since the start of the crisis. And we've raised nearly £3 million for community organisations through the LCR Cares campaign. In many ways, this past year has been the coming of age moment for devolution. Metro mayors have consistently stood up for their communities and been ahead of the curve on a wide range of important issues, like the adoption of masks on public transport, arguing against the reopening of the country when transmission rates in the north were still far too high, leading a campaign for self-isolation payments, fighting for greater funding for councils and businesses alike, and battling for a fair furlough for workers across the north when Rishi Sunak wanted to cut it to 2/3. To be honest, there have been times when I've had to take difficult decisions that weren't universally popular. But even now, with hindsight, I'm confident that we've been vindicated time and time again, and our recovery will start from a stronger base because of those difficult decisions we made. Which brings me to today. For all of the problems this pandemic has thrown up, it's also provided us with a major opportunity, a chance to take stock, to decide whether we want to continue along the same old path, business as usual, or choose a fairer, greener, more inclusive future that incorporates some of the better bits of lockdown, like flexible work and the appreciation of our green spaces, improved air quality and social cohesion. When Andy Burnham and I first talked about recovery this time last year, we were calling it Build Back Better. But it's a phrase that's become a bit meaningless when Boris Johnson misappropriated it. But those original values, principles and ideas still ring true, and they're at the heart of my plan for our city region's recovery after coronavirus. No borough left behind was the guiding principle for my first term, as I wanted to ensure that devolution affected every part of the city region. And I've worked hard to deliver on that. But I wanted my second term to build a place that is not only prosperous and ambitious, but also fairer. One where no one is left behind. My manifesto is a comprehensive plan for the region's future, underpinned by 5 key pledges, which I'm focusing on today. So first, our economic recovery. The hard truth is, despite the progress we've made, our local economy still doesn't work for everyone. The pandemic has only exacerbated that, with the poorest and most vulnerable often the most susceptible to COVID. To begin to address those things, it's vital that we have a strong economy, which is why we did so much to protect it over the past year. So to ensure that we hit the ground running, I've launched a £150 million COVID recovery fund, and that will back projects that will power our economic recovery, creating and safeguarding jobs. This fund is a huge show of confidence in the region's ability to come back from adversity over the past year. We will need that bounce back ability in buckets during the difficult times ahead. Second, we know the key to success will be to ensure that we invest in the technology of the future. So I want to make our region the most digitally connected in the country. We already have world-class facilities in the supercomputer at Hartree in Holton, for instance, the transatlantic internet cables in Southport that connect the UK with North America, and we've got thriving tech businesses right across the region. But I want to bring all of this together under the umbrella of a unified digital strategy, one that offers world-class infrastructure to help businesses succeed and to attract new ones. One that will tackle digital exclusion and which will improve broadband speeds for people all over the city region, and one that also encourages entrepreneurialism. So early this year, we launched a joint venture to help make that happen. And look, this isn't pie in the sky. We've already started the installation of a 212-kilometre digital cable network, which has the potential to contribute £1 billion to the local economy over the next 15 years. So I'll ensure that before the end of my second term, we will install ultra-fast broadband capability to all 6 areas of our city region. Now, our future lives will rely on digital technology more and more to provide important services. So a decent internet connection and proper digital literacy will become increasingly important. And I'll support programs that address financial and digital exclusion, and continue to collaborate with the public, private and third sectors to address gaps in digital provision. Thirdly, the most successful economies recognise something that we always have known here. The most important asset that we have is our people, and they'll always be the bedrock of a strong economy. Yet even before this crisis, more than 7,500 of our young people were not in education, employment or training. Many have been shut out of our economy, not because they lack talent, but because they lack opportunity. So I'm making a simple promise to the young people of Merseyside and Halton that if elected again in May, I will introduce the guarantee of a job offer, an apprenticeship, or a training course for every school leaver. We will work with government, our local authorities, Job Centre Plus and the DWP to simplify existing programmes and funding streams and enhance them with our own funding from the combined authority. That means that every young person will be given proper mentoring, independent careers advice, support and guidance, and an identified contact to make sure that they make the right decisions for their future. After the crash in 2008, it was young people who paid the price, and it was those from more disadvantaged backgrounds that were impacted the most. We can't allow that to happen again, and we won't in our area. Fourthly, transport, and the measure of a good public transport system is whether it gives everyone access to opportunity. But sadly, while there are strengths to our current network, the quality of service is patchy at best. Too many people can't get around quickly, easily and affordably. Now London gets 3 times more funding per person than we do in the north. In fact, one of the best illustrations of regional inequality in this country is the price of a bus ticket. It's £1.55 for a single in London, while in our city region, some journeys can cost multiples of that. If decent transport is good enough for Londoners, then it's certainly good enough for us here as well. So I'm proposing a London-style transport system of our own. In the past 3 years, we've been taking steps towards that goal, opening the first new station on the Merseyrail network in 20 years, taking delivery of our £500 million publicly owned trains, investing in a fleet of hydrogen buses and starting work on a 600-kilometre network of walking and cycling routes, which I know a lot of people have made good use of during the lockdown period. However, the current system is too fragmented and in need of fundamental reform. We need it to work in the interests of passengers, not shareholders. So we've already taken steps to take greater control over our buses, despite, it has to be said, the often incomprehensible legislation. And franchising has emerged as our leading option. Greater Manchester are already piloting a similar sort of approach, so we're watching the outcomes there very carefully. But it'll be the biggest change to our bus market since Thatcher's failed experiment of deregulation. Our proposals will give passengers a more reliable, affordable and convenient bus service. And I'll build on the work that we're already doing with a plan to bring together bus, train and ferry services with our active travel network to create a simple tap-in, tap-out transport system with a daily fare cap. This plan will give us the blueprint for the 21st century transport system we need, and that will provide a genuine, quality, greener and cleaner alternative to the car. And it will also provide the evidence needed to secure the extra funding from central government to make it a reality. And finally, talking of greener and cleaner, obviously the pandemic has dominated our attention over the last year or so. But sorting out the existential threat to our planet remains the biggest long-term challenge that we face. In the next few years, the threat of climate change has embedded itself in the public consciousness like never before. It is a monumental challenge for us all, but it also offers our region the chance to lead the way. We were the first city region to declare a climate emergency, and we already have ambitious targets to be net zero carbon by 2040 or sooner, which is at least 10 years before the national target. If trains, docks and canals made us the gateway to the first industrial revolution, then today digitalisation, decarbonisation and research and development can make us leaders in the fourth. Innovations like our hydrogen and Mersey tidal power projects could produce renewable energy to power up to 1 million homes, to create thousands of jobs and make our region a world leader in technologies that we could then export around the globe. We can become Britain's renewable energy coast. But to do so, we must match ambition with actions, and if I'm re-elected, I will. I'll publish an evidence-based roadmap to become net zero carbon by at least 2040 and double the number of green jobs in our region. These 5 pledges and the manifesto I'm launching today are the key to unlocking our region's future, to driving our economic recovery, to create opportunity and equality for all, and to ensure that we still have a planet to live on. You can choose. You can choose the radical embrace of the future, real action to tackle climate change and deliverable improvements for people in every corner of our region. Or you can choose the politics of division, of cronyism and duplicity. The Tories may well use their hands to clap for our key workers, we've all seen it, but they then sit on them when they could use those to vote for a pay rise. The Lib Dems are so wishy-washy that they'll say one thing to one audience and something completely different to another. And who, by the way, when they at long last got their chance to govern, let the country down by becoming more Tory than the Tories. And then there's the Greens, of course, who live in a world where nothing that anybody else does is ever quite good enough, who would stifle growth, increase unemployment and penalise those who can least afford it. For me, it's an easy choice. I have a track record of good governance, of fighting injustice, and of standing up for those left behind. I've already laid the foundations of a region that is stronger, fairer, greener, and more inclusive. And I'm the only candidate with any political experience who has held senior roles in national and local government. But I need your help and your support to give our region the future it deserves. If you put your faith in me, once again, I promise I won't let you down. So let's secure victory so that we can get to work together on our future.